Welcome, everybody, to the IDC Talks Diversity. This segment is going to talk about African Americans in the law. My name is Trez Quinn, and I'm the chair of the DEI Committee of the Illinois Defense Counsel. I will be moderating today an esteemed panel to discuss issues that affect and impact African Americans in the legal field. We have such a great panel. I'm excited about it, and I want to tell you some information about our panelists. We have Shannon King of Lasley Bear. Shannon is an attorney who focuses her practice on civil litigation in both Missouri and Illinois. She has an emphasis on transportation and commercial litigation. We have Brandon Brooks of Baker, Sturkey, Crowden, and Rice. Brandon is a former prosecutor with the city of St. Louis. He now focuses his practice on civil litigation and toxic tort and product liability actions. We have Rick Hammond, principal at the Insurance Claims and Litigation Consultants, LLC. Mr. Hammonds has 4 decades of industry and legal experience. He was the regulator and head of the Chicago office with the Illinois Department of Insurance, a professor of insurance law at Loyola University Chicago Law School, a property claims adjuster and examiner with Allstate Insurance Company, as well. Rick is and was a former president of the IDC. And we have Judge Zena Cruz, of course, last but definitely not least. Judge Cruz is a circuit court judge with the 20th Judicial Circuit, St. Clair County, Illinois. Judge Cruz was appointed in 2009 as an associate judge and elected as circuit judge in 2012. Judge Cruz presides over criminal felonies, and in addition to a full felony docket, she presides over 2 problem-solving courts, Veterans Court and Mental Health Court. Welcome, all of you, and thank you for participating in this very important talk.
Thank you.
So, this is the Diversity Committee, and as I stated earlier, I chair that committee, and diversity, equity, and inclusion has been a huge topics recently. And so we wanted to get the perspective of African Americans in the legal field, and that's why we're here today. So I'm going to start off with the first question, and I'm going to give this to Ms. King here.
Okay.
And the first question is, why did you decide to become an attorney?
Why did I decide to become an attorney? I was 4 years old and didn't know any better. I'm kidding. I made the decision to become an attorney when I was 4 years old. And
Really?
I did it in part because I didn't know anyone who looks like me doing that. I didn't have a lot of role models growing up, and instead of discouraging me from doing this, it encouraged me to do it more so that I could be somebody's role model.
What about you, Judge Cruz? First, you were, of course, in private practice. I didn't mention that. Mostly, I think you did bankruptcy, some family, some criminal cases, and then you was appointed to be a judge and ultimately elected in your current position. Why did you, first of all, choose to become an attorney and then a judge?
Similar to Miss King, I was very young, and I wasn't 4. I was probably around 12 or 13. And it sort of started as a joke with my older brothers, saying, "You argue so much, you need to be a lawyer." And of course, anything that they tried to challenge me to, I was going to look into it. But honestly, I have always looked at the position as a serving position. And I know there are, all these stereotypes, but from when I was little, the only one I saw on TV was Perry Mason. Understand that way back then we didn't have the benefit of the internet and consistent and constant media about others, so I saw Perry Mason and I thought I can do that. And like Miss King, I felt the challenge of him not being a woman. I felt the challenge of him not being a person of color, and I put my heart into it. And ever since those sort of talks and arguments with my brothers, and seeing the field as a serving field, I knew I wanted to be in the legal profession. As far as a judge, I didn't think about it too much as I was growing up, not even in law school. It wasn't until I actually started practicing. And one of my mentors is Alexis Otis Lewis, who was a judge at the time. And I was always impressed with her ability to connect and in a broad way, no matter who her litigants were, who her attorneys were. And I wanted to have the opportunity to serve in that capacity, because in my county, there just are not that many people of color serving. And I felt like I had something to offer and a perspective that could help my community.
What about you, Rick?
Well, my road is a little different from others, and I didn't even have a thought of becoming an attorney until very late in life. As a matter of fact, I was in my 30s when I went to law school. I went to law school at night while working full time in the insurance industry, and so the reason that I went to law school initially was to boost my insurance career. Antris talked about my insurance background. I worked as a regulator, as an adjuster, as a producer. I was the head of role similar to Sandra Wolf. I was an executive director of the National Insurance Trade Association. But during the course of those positions, I was looking for a way to boost my insurance career. And I should also mention that during the course of my insurance career, I also met a number of lawyers who failed to impress me. And I said to myself, if they can be a lawyer, then I think I can too. And so, I put two and two together, and law turned out to be my field. I had no plans or desire to practice law. However, probably within 6 months of me graduating from law school, I went to a job fair, and one of the local insurance defense firms courted me. They saw my insurance background, and I think they saw me as a source of business, and they offered me a job to do insurance coverage work. And even though I promised that I never would practice law, I haven't looked back, and I was a practicing lawyer for my entire career.
Wow, that's good stuff. Mr. Brooks.
Yes. It's probably not cool to see it anymore, but it really is the Cosby Show.
Okay.
Like that was my kind of like my introduction into Black professionals and Black success and what that can look like excellence, what that could look like. So I was like, all right, it's either gonna be a doctor or a lawyer, one or the other. I thought about being a doctor for a long time and got weeded out pretty fast in college. Trying to do pre-med. So then, okay, I fell back on being a lawyer.
That's good information. And, with mentoring, something you mentioned made me think of mentoring and why it's so very important. And if you don't have that mentoring experience where you have people that look like you or have some similarities to you, you don't really get the connection. You don't get connected. And so with any mentoring program, that exposure piece must be there to introduce the younger adults, younger kids, children to people with similar backgrounds so they can talk to you, and experience it firsthand, up close and in person.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I'll give you an example of that. Probably a couple of years ago, there was a kind of a Black book fair on Cherokee Street here in St. Louis.
Uh-huh.
And that day I was wearing a Black Lawyers Matters t-shirt on. And as we were leaving, a little Black girl said, "Are you a Black lawyer? No, like, are you a lawyer?" And I said, "Yes, I am." She says, "Wow, like I never met a Black lawyer before." And, so just our presence, we can't wear it on our sleeve, our law degree on our sleeves,
Right.
and if that can get into other stuff too, we can talk about later on. But just our presence, can be inspiring, and hopefully, maybe one day she'll be a lawyer. Who knows? It'd be incredible.
I agree with what you said, Trez, regarding mentorship. I can't tell you how many times when I tell little children, particularly little Black children, we have a reading program through the Illinois Judges Association. They say, "Do you have a TV show?" That is what they know
Right.
when they think of judges. And I may, say some quip like, "Well, those aren't real judges. Like, I'm a real judge." But it's very important. And I make it a point in my job, if I run across students in the organizations I'm in, my sorority, Jack and Jill, any member or someone I run across who gives me the slightest inkling that they might have an interest in law, I grab a hold of them. I invite them to come to the courtroom. I try to introduce them to the stakeholders in the industry so that they can see who they want to be, how they want to be, and start learning. You start picking up the characteristics and the attributes of those roles that you want to be a part of your life.
Yeah, well said. So what do you think about the role of diversity in the legal field? I mean, is it something that's important? And if you think it's important or not, why? Who wants to take that one? Rick?
Yeah, I'll start off this one. First, yes, no question, diversity is very important. I have a particular definition, though, or reasoning for diversity, and it's not just color. It's diversity of thought. When you hire people just because they're Black or just because they're Asian or Hispanic, that's not usually a road to a successful relationship, number one. But number two, you have to understand why you need diversity. I serve on Loyola University's Board of Trustees, and I'm one of two African Americans on their board. And, it's a large board, very highly acclaimed individuals on the board. And, I see myself not as a placeholder, but as someone who has a different perspective that lends itself to a conversation that they might not have considered. And so that is how I view, number one, the importance of diversity. Number two, let's talk about, why this is even a subject, which is, number one, the issue of bigotry or, racism and where that comes into play. And I think, quite honestly, and everyone is going to have a different perspective. And so I'm just sharing what mine is. And that is that we have the burden of proof, if you will, as diverse attorneys to be a success story for the firm's organizations, whatever, where we are, so that people will look at us as an example on why diversity is important. We have to do our job. We have to, perform. We just can't be that placeholder. We have to, we're blazing the trail. I was the first and only Black president of the Illinois Association of Defense Counsel, the organization we're talking to right now. So I was a trailblazer, or am a trailblazer, and I'd like to think that my term was, a successful term. But quite honestly, I don't talk hardly at all about being a Black lawyer. Quite honestly, I try not to talk about being a Black lawyer. I want to be known as a good lawyer. I don't want to be known as a good Black lawyer. I want to be known as a good lawyer, period. I don't like being reminded. I can tell you a story. When I was a property adjuster, this was in the 70s, and I was at my boss's house with a bunch of his team. And one of his friends called on the phone and he said, "Oh, I have all my adjusters over here visiting, we're just having a beer or whatever. Oh yeah, and one of them's a colored guy." I mean, that is I don't want to be reminded. I know I can look in the mirror and know what color I am. I want people to look at me and look at my character, look at my performance, and to say, this is a great lawyer. I've never once marketed I've been one of the biggest business developers at the firms, and these are 100+ firms where I've been. I've been generally in the top 10 and often number 1 or 2 in terms of business development. But, I don't want, and I've never marketed myself as a Black lawyer. I've marketed myself as a very good lawyer. Now I don't practice any longer. I serve as an expert witness. So, but those are I'll just call it my introduction to the subject of diversity and race.
Yeah, I don't totally understand what you're saying. Someone, an attorney, asked me a question while leaving court together from a docket call, and the room is in certain counties. I mean, the room is just full of attorneys, and most times, you're the only Black attorney in the room. Okay.
True.
And someone asked me, "Hey, does that bother you? How do you feel about that?" And I can say this. First of all, I understand, and no one's blind. I'm 6'4", 250 pounds. And when I walk into the room, people know and see me, and and I am a darker skinned Black guy. And I'm fine with that. I like it. So no one's gonna hide that. But when I'm in the room, I'm not thinking about that, at all.
Exactly.
I'm not thinking about it at all, man. And there's no. It's not even on my mind. I'm there to do a job, do a great job. If you want to say, "Hey, he's a great Black lawyer, he's a great lawyer," whatever term you give it, that's fine with me. I don't have a problem with it because I am Black and I happen to be a lawyer. But it doesn't. The color doesn't define my skill as a lawyer. So I get what you're saying about that, Rick. But let me stop talking. I'm supposed to be the moderator here. Shannon, let me hear from you about that.
Sure, I actually did have some thoughts. So just to make it clear, I graduated in 2019. I'm still, my boss calls it a puppy attorney. I'm still a baby at this. So I'm still learning. But I would say diversity definitely, it helps me pave like what my next career step will be. Like one of the first things I do if I'm applying for a new job or going to meet someone is I check their website to see the color scheme of the people in their firm, because that tells me what is their commitment to diversity. It tells me, are they committed to retaining attorneys of color? And that is for my second reason, is that diversity is important because our clients are no longer monochromatic. Our clients are diverse. And I think my background, not only as a person of color, but someone who came from nothing, I'm from Virginia, I'm from like the South. I can meet a lot of clients at their background. I can bond with them and connect with them, and due to not only my diversity and my complexion, but because of my background in general.
I have a saying that you have to be comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Absolutely.
Antris,
I often am.
You raised a point, in terms of being the only Black person in the room. I mean, I've held leadership positions in a number of national bar associations, still do. And that's just, get used to it. Shannon, I was the first Black lawyer at several major law firms in the city.
Absolutely.
And so, but that's being comfortable with being uncomfortable. So just thought I'd throw that out.
And I'll piggyback off of that. And I like to sometimes use that to my advantage. Because
Sure.
I'm the only person of color in a room, you won't forget me. As I meet you once, you'll remember me the second time, because no one else in that room even remotely looked like me.
Yeah.
And
Well, that's good. That's good news, bad news, because they'll always remember your name, but it's hard to remember everyone else's name.
Yeah. I'm usually, "Hey, you, how are you?"
What about you? Your perspective from the bench, Judge? What do you say?
Certainly it depends on the room. What is the room? Who's in the room? And I think too little value is placed on the diversity. it sounds like quite a few. We are some onlys or some first. I'm the only Black circuit judge in Southern Illinois.
I think you were the first. Yeah.
Woman,
Yeah.
African American on the circuit bench. And for until like last year, south of I-80, I was the only African American circuit judge. But to that, I say, so what?
Yeah.
I'm a good judge. I am a dedicated judge. I do my best to make really good decisions and to be unbiased. But I don't say so what in the room where there's a little girl who it inspires when they say she is an African American woman judge, because bells can go off in her heart and in her mind and in her ears. And so while I don't need to, like you, I'm going to be the only one in the room many times.
Right.
And the level of discomfort has changed for me. Like you, Rick, you become comfortable with the discomfort, but I'm getting to the stage where I'm growing weary of the discomfort. And we in 2022 should be at a stage where the discomfort should be minimal. When I learned of the in Florida, the issues of critical race theory can be taught so long as white students aren't uncomfortable. To that, I say, welcome to my world. From when I was small to growing up, I've always been in a situation where I've been the only or one of the few. So I have no problem with it being pointed out, none whatsoever. They'll figure out that I am a good judge. They'll figure out that I'm professional. They see that I'm a woman. They see that I'm African American. And even if I may not think about it when I walk into that room, I assure you that the rest of them are.
Right.
And I assure you that I know I have to stand up straighter. I have to, the whole, you have to do more, you have to do twice as much. That is very real. That is my reality. That goes into my level of comfort or discomfort. So if the diversity is pointed out as it relates to me, I'm proud of it. Say it. You'll get to know it.
I totally agree with everything you just said there. And just to clarify, when I say I don't think about it, what I mean is I already know it and acknowledge it.
Exactly. You don't have to think about it.
Right. And just like you, Judge, I do understand, though, that somebody is watching, whether that's another Black person, Black attorney, or everybody else. And I know they're watching to see how I perform. I understand, like as Rick indicated, that there are paths paved for me, and it's my responsibility to continue the paving. Yes. And my performance a lot of times is going to impact the next guy that looks like me who's in line. So when I say I know I stand on the shoulders of those who came before me, it's a real deal.
Absolutely.
Go ahead, Brandon.
Yeah, that's true. I don't know how much I can add. Everybody pretty much said everything. But I think it's really important, and pretty much in all fields of the law, especially in criminal law. As you see now with different African American women prosecutors who are taking on the police, the unions, and all that stuff. It's a uphill battle, and it matters. I think having someone of color challenging the system. I mean, just on every aspect of life. So
yeah, absolutely.
Judge, one thing I can say after hearing your comments, when people leave your courtroom, I bet they look at you as a great judge. Period. The end.
I have no doubts about that.
Well, I hope that is true, but I'll have to tell you when and give you an example of times that they walk out the room and say, I'm glad there was a Black judge. I've had situations. We have a judge who came to me early on years ago and said, hey, can I ask you a question? What is Andorra? And I said, Andra, like, why are you asking me that? Give me some context. He said there was an older lady in a custody battle, a primary witness in a custody trial. And he said, she kept saying, Andra. I said, she kept saying, Andra. He goes, yeah, that's it. Right?
Oh,
Well,
no.
he said, I stopped listening because I didn't understand what she was saying.
Oh, yeah.
I wish that
So-
surprised me.
Well, he didn't understand it. He had no clue that meant. And he had no clue.
Yeah.
And so in his mind, this lady could have been talking crazy, making up words, honestly.
Yeah.
So a black judge, though, it would have just flowed through me. It wouldn't have stopped my thought process because that's my grandmama. That's my auntie.
Yeah.
You know, and okay. In situations where I had a defendant where all of the witnesses said, not all, there were 3 witnesses who brought up eye color because the criminal had on a ski mask. And this is what they said. Oh, all I remember is he had bright eyes. He had pretty eyes. He had bright eyes. There was a black judge and a black defendant, and nobody caught that. And so I had to, this guy did not have pretty eyes. He did not have bright eyes. The rest of the stakeholders in the room just thought, these 3 women thought he had nice eyes or was attractive by his eyes. And so I had to, by the 3rd witness realizing nobody was going to make people understand what that means, I said, well, what do you mean by, you said bright eyes and you heard another witness say pretty eyes. What does that mean? And they had a hard time even verbalizing it. So I had to ask more questions. Do I have bright eyes? No, you don't have to worry about it. It won't hurt my feelings. She goes, no. I said, do I have pretty eyes? She said, no. I said, what is it? Is it the shape? She says, no. And I came up with other attributes. I said, is it the color? She said, yes, it's the color. I said, so when you say bright eyes, you're saying his eyes were lighter than African Americans usually have brown eyes. She goes, exactly. They were like light brownish green. So I bet that defendant walked out and said, that's a good judge and she's African American. Thank God.
Right.
Yeah.
Are you a criminal? You do.
I am. I preside over criminal felonies.
Okay. Okay.
The nuances are very important, and that's something that you'll lose with a lack of diversity on the bench and in law in general.
Very good statement. Yeah.
Yeah, well, from a criminal perspective, yeah, I mean, it's obviously huge. I mean, that goes back to my point about, a diverse judge can see things from a different perspective, and how important, although clearly that plays into civil too, but I can certainly see where from a criminal perspective, it's even more important.
No, absolutely. But also, as you stated, also civil comes into play lots of times. So, the elephant in the room for me, just my opinion, when it comes to diversity, those who are not as supportive maybe as I think they should be, or maybe even opponents of diversity, is I think the threat that something that's there is going to be taken away from them and given to someone else. And I've been made, well, not sure if I've been made to feel this way, but I've heard comments made to me that sounded as if the practice of diversity was somehow granting special privileges to those people who are subjects of that diversity practice. So my question is this: first of all, do you feel, number one, that you get special privileges because you're diverse? Anybody want to take that one?
I'll speak up and say that, first, as a lawyer and now as an expert witness, what I have found long ago is that when potential clients realize that you are the answer to their problem, they don't care what color you are. I've handled multi-million-dollar cases as an attorney and as an expert. And so when people see my credentials, they say hired, not, oh my God. I mean, it's like If you get hit by a car and a black doctor shows up, I don't think you're going to say, well, no, I'll wait for a white one to show up. You're going to say, can this person help me? That's number one. Number two, this was my law school experience. My law school experience was that I went at night, as you know, and for 4 years, all the things that could go wrong did go wrong. Tragedies, deaths, sicknesses, everything that could go wrong. But what were you required to do during that period? You had to just keep moving forward. You just couldn't get thrown off that track. My father, when my mother got really seriously ill, I asked if I should quit law school. He said, no, you keep going. You'll be better for the family. You just keep moving forward. So that's the same thing now. I view, people that have issues, racial and otherwise, I view them like a gnat that's just flying around my head. Do I lose sleep over a gnat flying around my head, or do I just keep moving forward? I don't let anything, and that's what law school taught me, is don't let anything throw you off of your track. Now we're on a success track. We're trying to achieve something. And the last thing I'm going to let happen is for some gnat that calls himself a bigot or whatever flying around to derail me. I don't even pay attention. I don't lose sleep over a gnat if it's real or if it's in walking on 2 feet. I just keep moving forward and not let anything derail me. That's how I view it, that we have our own personal responsibility not to get derailed.
No doubt about that. And I think, sometimes the conversation, at least my conversation, is different depending on the audience, how I address certain things that way. To an audience that doesn't understand the perspective, yeah, we need to point out what needs to be done differently. To my audience, it's like what you're saying, Rick. You got to push through adversity, no matter what's going on. And even well before law school, for me, I'm talking about, grade school, when the neighbor was murdered, friend murdered or whatever. This is just real stuff. No one came into my neighborhood and say, are you okay? No one got a counselor into the schools and say, hey, let's talk to these kids. What we had to do? We had to go to school and take the test, and we had to pass. That was it. And I'm not saying that's great, but that's just the way it was.
It's real.
I have a saying that no client goes to bed wondering if they're sending you enough business. They don't lose sleep over that. And likewise, no gnat goes to bed wondering if you're, feeling warm and fuzzy. You have that responsibility. And so I hear you, Antris, very loud and clear.
Another thing I'll say about that too.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, Judge. Let me just say this one thing, and I'm going to get to the panel. The other thing, though, is about your credentials. That's true. I mean, you have to have a certain level, I guess, of achievement to get certain things. But what diversity does address is opportunity. So sometimes you have all of the accolades, the achievements, but for diversity, you won't get the opportunity to show off your stuff sometimes. But anyway, back to the panel. Judge, I'm sorry, you were going to say something.
No, I was just going to piggyback on what you both said. We have all had to learn to self-soothe. Because there weren't many folks jumping at the bit to make us feel better and primp us back up. We had to self-soothe and press on.
That's right.
Do you feel like, Judge, you have special privileges because you're diverse?
In my workplace?
Your workplace?
No.
And the reason I'm asking that question is because I remember that question. Well, a comment was made to that effect, that there were special privileges being made, and at this former firm, I no longer work at that firm. We had about 450 to 500 attorneys. I think 6 Black attorneys in the entire firm out across the country, and someone made a statement that they were giving special privileges to the Black attorneys, and the math didn't make sense to me. If you got 450, 500, you're 6 of us. I never understood that. So I just wanted to get you guys' perspective. Is there situations where you feel like you're getting special privileges? Because
I think I think that many of the times the voices that are making that claim are coming from a place of fragility and insecurity.
Okay.
And they need that to be what's going on for their own soothing. They need that to be what's happening, because the thought that you could be just as good, the thought that you could be better, they can't handle that thought process. So their fragility and insecurity leads them to, oh, you're getting special privilege. That has to be it. First of all, the playing field has to be level in order to make that type of claim. It is not level. And there are times when you can raise it and get it to a point, but too often and regularly, the playing field is not level. So I can't even put those two words in the same sentence.
No.
To piggyback off of Judge Cruz, if I may, I'm thinking that the term special privileges is kind of where those same people get confused of equality versus equity. Because sure, there were a few diversity job fairs I attended in law school, but I wouldn't consider that so much a special privilege. It's just like maybe an opportunity for my name to be in the stack and it be reviewed in a smaller stack. But at the end of the day, I still have to do interviews. I still have to have the grades. But maybe because I was Black, brown, whatever you want to call me, the stack was a little bit smaller for the same places hiring from the much larger stack for the regular job fairs.
You know, we had a hard time getting Black students on our moot court at law school. I went to school in the South. And one of the judges that was on the moot court team said he had what he called a come to Jesus moment. He said he realized that when the Black student walked in for the tryout, they started at 0 and had to build up their points. He said, but when the white students walked in, they started out at the 10, and only if they messed up did they get lower. So that, what you said, is a prime example of why there are circumstances or opportunities that are in place, because there are so many folks that when you walk in a room, you start out at 0 and you gotta build your way up, versus like other folks, you walking in with already with a 10, and only if you mess up do you get deductions.
I agree. And not to mention, when there's 100 kids applying for a job and only 6 of them are Black, they're probably going to get muted, even if unintentionally, versus if you give just the 6 applications, they have a much more fair shake at it.
Well, I can just tell you, my first job out of law school was because there was a push for diversity. I never looked at diversity as giving someone a job who is not qualified. That's right. I don't support that.
Right.
But I look at it as giving someone an opportunity that otherwise would not have an opportunity because their background. Okay.
Yes.
For me, growing up in the city of East St. Louis, and where I was from, this is not everybody's experience from the city of East St. Louis. This is my experience. I didn't know any lawyers. I didn't know any judges. My family didn't have those connections, and where they could call a friend to give me an opportunity to give me an interview. And what happens in most situations is there's some type of connection, family member, friend of a friend, who get the nod for those opportunities. And so, yeah, if you want to say that as a quote unquote special privilege, which I don't see it as that, I see it the same way Shannon sees it. It's just giving me an opportunity and exercising some equality. Brandon, did you want to add something to that?
No.
Not at all. Okay, he said no, not at all. So I'm sorry, Rick, did you have something?
I was just going to say that there's an old James Brown song, and I'll use his vernacular. I don't need anybody to give me nothing. Just open up the door and I'll get it myself.
Exactly.
And that's and I think that's what is probably the truth of most Black professionals. Is we're not looking for special privileges. We're not looking for a handout. Just open the door for us the same way it's open for anyone else, and we'll get it, and we'll get it ourselves. And at least that's the way I think it should be. So just thought I'd throw that out.
No,
No,
absolutely.
I agree.
So law firms are hiring diverse attorneys from all backgrounds of diversity. A problem from my conversations with several leaders of law firms, as well as my experience, has been retention. Okay. And so a very good question was posed to me, and I'll pose the same question to you. So you've hired the attorney, the diverse attorney. What can law firms do better to make that attorney feel maybe a part of the team, more accepted, to where they stay longer, or whatever they can do to retain that attorney? Someone once said that diversity is asking someone to the dance, and inclusion is asking that person to dance. And I think that's a part of the equation that's being left out or missed by a lot of the corporations, law firms, who's trying to hire qualified Black attorneys and then keep them. It's, I went in, just as you did, Rick. I went to law school when I was 30 years old. Before law school, I was, supervisor of this department, a healthcare administrator of med-surg at this hospital. And so I've been in the corporate world in the game for a while, and so I understood kind of how things worked. And so my experience going into a majority firm was a lot different from someone who's 26 years old, straight through undergrad to law school, no jobs, from a background similar to mine, and get into this environment. I could imagine how it would have been for me, a lot different. So, what I see is the missing piece is they don't feel comfortable. They don't feel a part of the team. They don't feel accepted. They feel like outsiders. Now, again, this is just my viewpoint and my experience. I haven't talked to, of course, every Black attorney who's been in majority firms. So, but in your experiences or your opinions, what you think these majority law firms can do to retain these Black attorneys and make them, feel a part of the team or whatnot?
Well, first, I think it goes back to the being comfortable with being uncomfortable scenario. And Andres, by the way, one thing I think you and I both share is having a career before law. Right. At least for me, I had to start over again. I was a very well respected business person. And then when I went into a law firm as a first year lawyer, I'm being treated like I just got out of high school, basically. So that takes getting used to. But to your point, yeah, retention is the tough one. Recruitment, that's, I won't say it's easy, but it's easier to recruit than it is to retain. But I think, again, not to be disrespectful, I think it's a two-way street.
Yes.
We have to ask ourselves, what can we do to, I had someone tell me once before, never let anybody run you away from a job, period, the end. If that's a job you want, don't let anyone ever run you out the door. And so I'm saying that we have a responsibility too, to that comfortable with being uncomfortable. But what does the firm have to do? Yeah, I think it's a character issue, personally. I think it's a top-down character issue. There has to be, the character mindset that we're just not hiring a Black lawyer. We're hiring a lawyer who happens to be Black. And we, when I market, and I'll say this and I'll pass the baton, when I go out for new clients when I was practicing law, and I said I was I was a rainmaker. What did I do? When I went to a new client's office, I spent the first 30 minutes talking about life, about weather, sports, my family, where I like to vacation. Why did I do that? Because I wanted them to see that I'm no different than they are.
Right.
And by the time of that conversation, they're like, hey, I like this guy. He's a nice guy. Oh, he happens to be Black, but he's a nice guy and he knows his stuff. Well, same thing with retention. The character has to be from the top down, and not, for me, not treating me like I'm a Black lawyer, but treating me like I'm Rick Hammond, who happens to be Black. Get to know me, get to know me, and you'll find out that I'm no different. I have the same cares. There's a quote I challenge everyone to look up by Mark Twain about what's fatal to prejudice is travel, because you get to find out people around the world are pretty much all the same. We have the same cares, fears, and so forth. All you got to do is get to know people. So that to me is a big key for retention, is getting to know the person that you hired and not just assume that they're going to be different from now on.
Yes, those are all great points. A senior attorney once said to me, the easiest way to not like somebody is to not know them.
Thank you.
As simple as that sounds, I mean, it just hit home like, man, you know what, you're right. Anybody want to jump in there on that one?
So I will jump in just based on like my own previous experiences. I don't know if I have a solution, but I'll bring up the issue that kind of came up when I was deciding to leave a former firm. And that, like everyone on this panel has said, I know I'm Black. I know when I wake up, I know when I go to bed. And I don't mind being reminded of it, but there's one thing to be reminded of it, and there's another thing to feel like you are not the same as everyone else because of it. And to expand on that, and I don't know if the guys on the panel shake their head or not, but in my first job, I got a lot of questions about my hair, about my skin color, about just beauty things. And I noticed they would never be the same question that like my white counterparts would get. Like if a coworker came in with her hair done, oh, your hair looks great, that's so pretty. That was the end of the story. For me, oh, your hair looks nice. How'd you do it? How is that done? How long does it take? Just things of that nature, like it was much more in depth. And I would come away feeling drained by it. And I actually had to talk to another friend about it. And I'm like, why do I get anxiety when I change anything about myself and I'm going to work and everyone's going to notice? And she said it's because it makes you feel like you're other. It's very othering to get a series of questions that no one else will get. And it does not make you feel like you fit in. It doesn't make you feel like you're part of the culture. It makes you stand out in a way that is uncomfortable. And there's different ways to approach it. But everyone commenting and asking all these questions multiple times is not how you approach it.
Yeah. And it's fun. That's so poignant, Shannon. I applaud you for that. I just think to myself, I like to eat pizza on the weekend. I like to watch the Bears, the playoffs, and talk about, Loyola basketball. And, so all of these, and that's point when I talked about when I go into a new client's office, you have the same likes, dislikes as we all do. And so the thing to talk about are the similarities, and not the differences. And I think that's part of that retention issue is to, Untras, you nailed it, get to know the person. That's all you got to do. It's just, you'll find after you get to know someone, wow, they just happen to be Hispanic. They just happen to be Asian or Black, but they like to do the same thing we do. We care about taxes. We all have the same issues.
Yeah, my hair looks good. It's a different style than yours, but it still looks good. Let's leave it here.
But it's okay also. I mean, I think most of us can agree there are definitely more similarities and differences if you sit down and you get to know someone. But it's okay to be different if you have different culture. And I always, when I mentor younger Black attorneys, you have to be true to who you are. That doesn't mean don't be professional. You go in there, you be professional, you be timely, you master the law as much as possible. Your job is the priority. You don't have to try and blend in though. When you do that, you lose yourself, okay? So it's one thing to recognize the similarities, but as a Black attorney, I don't have to do things the way you do it or your culture do it because, that's who you are and I am who I am. So I just say, don't lose yourself either. Judge Cruz, I'm sorry, Brandy.
I was just saying that I think if firms or any employer is having difficulties, maintaining people of color, at one point you got to start thinking maybe it's me, maybe it's the employer that's having the issue, it's not them, so they got to do some soul searching, but also, maybe it's mentoring, maybe it's something, like how you got to make it a priority, or as your billable hours is a priority, diversity should be a priority, get to know mentorship should be a priority, like carve out see, instead of billable hours, carve out non-billable hour time to something else that the first, I need to think of different reasons, but I think it has to be a priority, and it's not. Priority is billable hours.
Let me leave you with something, and that is creating value for yourself. If when I mentioned my business development and moving from firm to firm, when I decided to leave one law firm and go to another, it didn't take long for someone to say Black lawyer with a multi-million-dollar practice versus, not having any business. So I'm saying that to say, and it doesn't have to be business. You could just be a great lawyer, known as a great lawyer. So you build value for yourself. Trust me, the walls will fall. When people see that you are a commodity and you have value to that firm, they will do everything in the world to retain you. So I just want to not let that get lost. And Mr. Brooks, you nailed it on the head too. I think that it is a two-way street. They have to have good character from the top down, but you have to do your part from where you stand to make them want to keep you.
No, that's a great point, Rick. And I'm so glad that we are discussing, both sides, because it is a two-way street. And we're not just saying it's the firm, it's the firm. The firm has to do this.
Right.
We do have a level of responsibility to do our jobs, to be professional, present professionally, and all those things. Those are very important.
And another hard part is like you're also kind of Lewis and Clark. If you're the only one there, kind of you're blazing the trail, and hopefully making it easier for the next person behind you.
Yeah.
So as the judge said, you gotta be twice as good, because they're going to look at you, the next people behind you, saying, "Well, we hired a Black guy, and he wasn't billing, he wasn't doing this, he wasn't doing that," and then that path could get covered up. So it's like you have to really show up and show out.
Right. Yeah, this is a great conversation. I think we can go another 2 hours and I wouldn't get tired. It's really so much to talk about. I would love to talk about, what we're taught, that you have to be twice as good. I don't think many people understand that and what that really means. And I'll just say, we've heard of the studies where, you have legal research memos that are looked at by senior partners at law firms without knowing who the author is, and how those memos are critiqued a lot harder when they find out that it's from a Black associate or whatnot. So these things are real. These things are not being made up. I do feel like the higher the performance, the higher the tolerance, right? But also there's another flip to that to say, I think that, you have to come in at a certain level ready to go. And like Brandon just said, ready to show up and show out as Black attorneys, and you have to be sharp. So I'll ask you, last question, we're running out of time again. I thank you all for showing up and having great insight and perspectives. And I'm hoping that someone learned something today from listening to this panel. So the last question is this: what can we do better, the legal field as a whole, including ourselves, meaning Black attorneys, African-American attorneys, to help others better understand the importance of diversity?
I'll say being a great role model, number one. And Judge, you touched on something too about the kids, I'll call them. I think that's hugely important. People watch you, I think, more sometimes than they hear you. So how you perform, how you carry yourself, your character, your reputation, I think is huge. I was told when I was in law school, be careful about your reputation, because number one, it's a smaller legal community than you really think it is. And so if you look at my website, it says reputation and experience matters. I covet my reputation. And so that, Andres, I think is the key. One of the keys is making sure that you have clean hands and reach back and touch someone else, and the way the judge was talking about.
I also think it's important that we talk to the folks that we're talking about. Like, I think I have colleagues on the bench who, you know, there are these implicit biases that we have to endure on a regular basis. And when we talk about levels of comfort and discomfort, I have colleagues on the bench who I can walk in the room and say, let's talk about what was just said. Or let's talk about what just happened. Did you know? And then they are willing to talk to me about it. And the greatest part of it is that aha moment when they go, you know what? I didn't think about that. That's all we want you to do. Think about it. Still be who you are. We'll still be who we are. Everyone, and I love how we're the same and we're different. But judge me on how I treat you. Judge me on my reputation and my experience, not on the color of my skin or on my gender or how my hair is or whether I wear makeup. You know, get to the heart of me, my integrity, and make your decisions about me that way. But again, engaging in those conversations with folks that are not in a marginalized group, who are willing to understand that these things are real, whether, you know, they may not be calling you the N-word, but those implicit biases are just as harmful, the effects of them.
Shannon?
No, I would just piggyback off of what Mr. Hammond and Judge said, in that we can't allow people to remain willfully ignorant. Like, I think we have a duty as professionals, as employees, as people, to educate those who want to learn and maybe educate those who don't really want to learn. We can only try.
Yeah. Brandon?
Yeah, and I will finish with Maya Angelou. Do the best you can until you know better. And when you know better, do better.
Yeah, absolutely.
But thank you, guys. This is awesome. Like I said, I could do this for another 2 hours or more, and you guys helped me to a degree as well. So look forward to maybe talking to you guys again, maybe having a part 2 of this conversation.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. And to the Illinois Defense Counsel, I think it's very worthwhile that they have put their walking the walk that's being talked all the time. And so I commend you on being over the diversity committee and really encourage you to continue.
Thank you, Judge. Thank you. Thank you, guys.
All right.